In our last video, we concluded that the Beit HaMikdash is not going to fall down from the sky. We need to build it. Well, maybe that's how it was in the time of the first and second temples, but haven't I heard that Beit Shlishi has to be built by Mashiach? Who are we to do such a thing? In part 2 of our series, we quoted the Rambam in Hilchot Beit HaBechira, who says that it is a positive commandment to build the Beit HaMikdash. But doesn't he also state in Hilchot Melachim that Mashiach comes and builds it? He says, the king Mashiach will in the future rise up and return the monarchy of David to its pristine state of sovereignty. He will build the temple and gather the dispersed of Israel, and in his time all the Torah's statutes will be reinstated into practice as of old. There's no contradiction between Maimonides' words in Hilchot Beit HaBechira and his statement in Hilchot Melachim. In Hilchot Melachim, he is teaching us an essential principle: the difference between the idea of Messianic potential, a chazakah of being Mashiach, meaning someone who is a potential candidate until proven otherwise, and vadai Mashiach, an individual, the certainty of whose identity as Mashiach, as proven through his deeds, is beyond dispute. Thus he tells us in these words, if a king of Davidic ancestry arises learned in Torah and occupied with the mitzvot like David his ancestor, and he influences all of Israel to follow the Torah and strengthen their observance, and he wages the wars of Hashem, he can be presumed, bechezkat, to be a proper candidate. However, if he accomplishes and succeeds and builds the temple in its proper place and ingathers the exiles of Israel, behold, that man is Mashiach beyond any doubt, and he will fix the whole world to serve Hashem together. Those are the Rambam's words. This is precisely why, in this very same section, Maimonides cites the historic precedent of the great Rabbi Akiva's enthusiastic support of Bar Kochba. In Maimonides' words, the great Rabbi Akiva and all the sages of his generation were convinced that Bar Kochba was Mashiach. Again, Chizkat Mashiach, based on Bar Kochba's intentions. He led the rebellion against Rome with the goal of rebuilding the temple and reinstituting the offerings. Unfortunately, it became clear that they were mistaken. But the Rambam's recording of this incident here is telling as to the mandate and qualifications of Mashiach himself. What exactly did Rabbi Akiva see in Bar Kochba, who was not the most accomplished Torah scholar, but was rather a brave, daring, and dedicated military leader? What did he see? Messianic potential. There can be a scenario of the Beit HaMikdash without Mashiach, as it was in the time of the first and second temples, but there can be no Mashiach without the Beit HaMikdash. When he arrives, if it hasn't been built yet, he will see to it that it is done, and in so doing, he will establish his authority, thus realizing his messianic potential and succeeding where Bar Kochba failed. But there's also a possible scenario, as mentioned by our prophets, wherein the Mashiach arrives to an already built Beit HaMikdash. Behold, I am sending my messenger, and he will clear a path before me. Suddenly the master whom you seek will come to his sanctuary. This is also reflected by the Midrash that states, when Mashiach arrives, he will stand on the roof of the Holy Temple and shout out to Israel, humble ones, the time of your redemption is at hand. But let's get back to the Rambam. The Kesef Mishnah, who describes his goal as clarifying the sources of the Rambam's halachot, states simply at the beginning of this chapter in Hilchot Melachim, these are good beliefs regarding the coming of the Mashiach, and I have nothing to add. Meaning, these are not halachot. The scenario may not conform to these expectations at all. In fact, further in this very same chapter, Maimonides himself clearly states that there is no set chronological order agreed upon by the sages as to how exactly these things will come about, and we will not know until they happen. He further exhorts us not to become overly obsessed or preoccupied with these matters. So I'm seeing that the building of the temple is so much simpler than we have been accustomed to believe. And here I've always assumed that since the situation is beyond us, how else or who else could do it? Maybe that's part of the problem. What exactly do people think Mashiach is? In the Rambam's opinion, the world will be the same world, except that Israel will live in peace with the nations and the wisdom of the Torah will be greatly valued. Quality of life and longevity will be greatly increased. However, there will still be rich and poor, people will still have to work to earn a living, and everyone, including Mashiach himself and his children and his grandchildren, will ultimately die. We can't use Mashiach as an excuse. We have our jobs and he has his. We mustn't pin our excuses for inaction on Mashiach. In conclusion, the Rambam tells us explicitly that we are not to wait for the Mashiach to perform the commandments, for none of them are in any way dependent on Mashiach's arrival. In his words, if Hashem grants us or our children or our grandchildren the merit to see the King, the Mashiach, that is very good. And if not, we have lost nothing by doing the mitzvot. We have gained, for we have acted according to our duty. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some work to do. Please check out all the sources for the lessons discussed in this video in the description text below, and please feel free to join in the conversation in the comments section. If you liked this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel for more Torah teachings every week. Coming up next in our Holy Temple Mythbusters series, Part 4, the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering. Is it relevant today?